Good day, everyone. Let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Christy Van Kirk. I'm a conventionally trained OBGYN. I have practiced obstetrics and gynecology for 10 years before opening my own clinic called Healthy Lifestyle Medicine, which is a functional holistic medicine practice. I was the first to bring functional medicine to Cheyenne, Wyoming, my hometown community, and I'm super proud of that. Today, on this webinar, I would like to share my excitement with my patients on latest advancements in hormone therapy. I would like to introduce Dr. Rosensweet, who is a top leader and expert in the hormone treating patients in menopause and andropause for over 30 years. And Dr. Rosensweet is quickly becoming one of my favorite mentors. So through this conference, we're going to highlight the benefits of BRITE technology. But before we do that, let me start by introducing Dr. David Rosensweet. Dr. Rosensweet is the founder and the brains behind the BRITE Hormone Platform, the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine. He has been leading the way in hormones, like I said, for over 30 years. He graduated from the University of Michigan School of Medicine, 1968. And I just have to tease a little bit, Dr. Rosensweet, that was before I was born. I think that speaks to what an expert and what a trusted physician you have been over this long career of yours that is still going strong. Dr. Rosensweet is nationally known as a lecturer and presenter at many of the top conferences that I myself go to learn about cutting edge practices, A4M, and many other leading conferences. He's authored 3 books and he has expertise in treatment of menopause and andropause and has been educating medical providers for many years and also as a leader in education. With that introduction, Rosensweet, hello and welcome. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to visit with you today.
Likewise, Christy. We've gotten to know each other, and I'm so it's so much fun to team up. This is such a team sport of medicine, and we're so honored to be working with you.
Thank you. Thank you. You have definitely been a lot of support really quickly as I've dived into this new platform. And as we talk more about the BRITE platform, would you start by sharing with my guests what's it been like helping women and men for over 30 years in your career with hormones specifically, because I know how powerful hormones are and how much that can change the quality of life for a person?
Well, I started right out of the gate from medical school, really interested in tools. I loved my medical training. It was like going to a church or synagogue for me. And yet I kept asking the question, what works? Because I discovered patients really come to physicians that they want specific functional help. And over the years, I gathered tools and worked with as a functional medicine really in the beginning. And then about 33 years ago, a patient of mine, Deborah, in midlife, I knew her quite well. She had been so successful, she retired in her 40s. Think about what that takes. And she came storming into my office one morning. I've never seen her upset. She said, "I'm going crazy. Please help me. Please believe me. I'm going." And I had spoken to a pioneer in hormone research, and I gave her some progesterone. And 3 weeks later, I got a letter from her saying, "I can't believe this. I'm totally myself again. Thank you so much." And I wasn't used to seeing results like that. But I didn't really feel totally in control of my career. She referred many patients to me. And lo and behold, I started seeing a lot of women in menopause and started learning that here you have relatively healthy, empowered women falling off a cliff. Midlife, 80% of women experience such life-disruptive symptoms because these hormones are so powerful. They're the most powerful biochemicals in our body. And when we lose them, there's consequences everywhere. Brain, bones, muscles, vagina, and for men, erectile function, energy, muscles. The list goes on and on. When you follow the ultimate trajectory of hormone loss, you see the origin of assisted living facilities and nursing homes. That's another topic. I think it's amongst the most important work we do. Mainly when I began, there was so little known because hormone and menopause and andropause were like orphans. Everyone got so upset from a misguided reporting of a study. And so I was beginning at sort of a beginning, and I needed to figure it out with women. So even though we have a method, I think I see it much more as I paid a lot of attention. I specialized in it and paid a lot of attention to what's the right thing. How do you do this properly? And in obstetrics and gynecology, there's been so much experience that the body of knowledge, the standard of care is solid. Not so in hormone medicine. Because everyone got scared away from it, there is no specialization. And I want to bring up the significance of that later. So meanwhile, it was so effective, and as magic goes, as life goes, I started getting so interested in the results I was getting and being effective like that. And that's how it all began for me. And then here we are many years later.
I just have to point out that you are a true pioneer, because today I feel like hormones and hormone discussion and proper use of hormones is really out there on social media. Like, it is the hot topic. But you've been doing this for 30 years. You knew. How'd you know this was going to be a hot topic? You were seeing how much it was changing the lives of your patients. And I just think that that is so impressive. I feel so lucky to be working with an expert who somehow knew how important this was before the rest of the medical world today, now saying this is so important. And I also just appreciate the courage that it takes on your end to say, hey, I don't have much guidance here, and I'm learning as I go, so that now you do have all this experience and hundreds of patients that you can say, I know what works. I know what's safe. I know what's effective. I know how to do hormones best. And I think I feel very lucky to be connected with you. And I may just dive into kind of, if it's okay with you, Dr. Rosensweet, what my current hormone practice looks like, because this is a big deal, and this is going to be potentially a transition of how people think about doing things as we get more information. And you are one of the pioneers leading the way, saying, hey, let's standardize care and let's standardize how women are receiving their hormones so it is done as safely as possible. And so to give the example of what my patients are used to, so that as we dive deeper into the BRITE program, you can really help them understand what this transition would look like and what the benefits would be. Many of my patients are on pellet hormones, estradiol and testosterone. Some patients are on compounded topical creams from our local compounding pharmacy, biased and testosterone, and taking oral micronized progesterone. My male patients are mostly on injectable testosterone cypionates. So this is a way that I have practiced hormones for these past 6 years. My patients are getting amazing results when it comes to how they feel, their energy levels, weight loss, quality of life. But maybe there are other ways to be thinking about doing hormones, and maybe there are reasons this would be a better fit for a person, or why would a person consider transitioning? Just so that all of my patients know, you and I understand that we're bringing in new information that is exciting and cutting edge technology. And it's a big deal for a person to have an open mind to say, what is this BRITE hormone program? And why should I consider it? So with that, would you dive into everything about bright hormones, please.
Yes. When I first started off, I had the of knowing colleagues that were already immersed in the hormone world. In fact, I knew the medical doctor that brought compounded bioidenticals into popularity in the United States. In fact, I eventually wound up teaching with him. And already it seemed to me that the best way that was offered at the time was daily topical application of 4 hormones for women. The estrogens, I say estrogens because there's more than one, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA. And so I also linked up with a compounding pharmacist who had been doing this work himself, and he offered these topical gels. They used to come in these white cosmetic jars back in the early 90s. They were so effective. And what I learned early on surprised me because I began from zero. I started learning that there was no one dose fits all. I started learning that, oh my goodness, these hormones are going into individual women's bodies. They have different levels of sensitivities, different levels of hormonal balance, different levels of needs, different levels of absorption. But the method I was using could help me individualize it. And that was the break I had. It was a lucky break because I started out from not knowing. I thought, well, I'm going to teach the women a certain amount that I think would be valuable for them to know, like what's a symptom of too little estrogen. And as we start applying estrogen, when do you stop as you gradually increase the dose? Well, you start low and you gradually increase the dose until the symptoms of, let's say, hot flashes in the middle of the night disappear. And if you keep on increasing and you go too high, these hormones are so strong that in most women, they give symptoms that the women don't like. They'll overstimulate breast glandular tissue, for example, and women will get breast tenderness and nipple tenderness. Well, that's too high. Let's back down. By educating the women on this is what could happen and this is what we expect, they would give me feedback through frequent consultations, and we would oscillate into optimal for each individual woman. And the shock to me was how much variation there was. Like, I grew up in the world when you had a strep throat, you gave someone 500 milligrams of amoxicillin. That was it. You gave everybody 500 milligrams. And when I started working in thyroid and had my own mentor, we were seeing a patient together. And we walked out of the room and he said, she's hypothyroid. And we have no idea what to write down in the prescription pad because we don't know how much she needs. She's an individual. But no problem. We'll start low. We'll gradually increase. She'll feel better. And if we get too high, she'll get hyperthyroid. We'll back her down. We're going to have her find her own dose. Well, he went to medical school. I went to medical school. No one had ever said, have the patient find their own dose. And sorry to be so lengthy there, but what I did doing this with hundreds of women is I saw the wide individuality. How much estrogen do they need? How much progesterone they need? How much testosterone they need? And getting the balance right, because the balance was different. You can even see balance difference in young women who are estrogen rich, or other young women who are testosterone rich. There's more testosterone in a woman's body than there is her most potent estrogen. Or women who are progesterone rich, body type vary. But I found, hey, when you just start from scratch and you give guidelines on how to start low and gradually increase, every woman finds her own balance.
Rosensweet, like 2 points that are really hitting home for me right now, and then I'll have you please continue. One is bioindividuality. That is huge, and that is a main focus at my clinic and with my patients, and the fact that we all are different and our bodies are always changing. And then point 2 would be empowerment. You are empowering patients to say, you're in charge of your body and you can trust your body and get to know your body and listen to your body. And that's how we can get the best results, I believe, when we empower our patients to say, I'm the doctor, I'm here to support, but the true healer guide here is the patient themselves. So I just had to point out those 2 points that I absolutely love. And then please tell us more then about developing BRITE.
Well, it's a team sport. That's how you get the best results, because that's what we want. And again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I was startled as to how much variation. Like some women, let's just take estrogen, for example. I'm going to throw a number. It won't make sense to the audience so much, but some women, they do really well on 0.9 milligrams of estradiol equivalent. Other women do better on 4.8. This is the range in my practice. Look at that variation and everything in between. That's just with estrogen. The average is 2.7 in my practice, but look, 0.9 to 4.8, that is such a wide spread. But it's not a problem when you start from scratch and you do it with each hormone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And that led for me to a lot of satisfied women. And that's the big gift when a woman said, oh my God, I feel myself again. That's what we're looking for. And then I had this other gift that Dr. Wright gave me. It was the power of 24-hour urine hormone testing. Hormone testing is quite a new field. And 24-hour urine hormone testing has been the gold standard since the late 1960s. And I got to see in living technicolor when a woman said to me, wow, I feel better. And that's when we test. We don't test before that. And then we did a study in my practice, and what I learned that dose determination by that titration process is not enough, because when we only test when a woman says, wow, I'm good. And what we learned is 50% of the women that we tested were not on sufficient hormones to protect their vagina and their bone, which is a bare minimum, because we're also talking about mind, we're also talking about skin, we're talking about everything. And 25% of them were on doses a little too rich that put them at risk for breast glandular cell proliferation. We don't want that midlife. It's fine in a young woman. And so the 24-hour urine hormone test is very much a part of the process to confirm and tweak. And, most of the time we are tweaking. They're minor tweaks, but they are tweaks. And those are two parts of the process. Now, I grew up in an era when the only thing I learned about hormone replenishing was Premarin, coarse urine-derived estrogen. That's what was prevalent. 18 million American women, 40% of all women in menopause, were on Premarin in 2002. And you know what? These women did better. I saw them. They came to me to convert. They were interested in bioidenticals, but they weren't necessarily dissatisfied. I could tell why there were so many American women on Premarin. I've never written a prescription for it, but the whole world of hormones has evolved. Just like we moved from horse and carriage to automobile, now to electric automobile. Things improve when you pay a lot of attention to things. Things get better in many endeavors. And that's what's happened in the hormone world. I've watched that happen. I've been part of that happening. Another element that we think is really important is what I learned over time is though that there were other methods, and if Premarin was the only tool I had, I would use it. And there's other tools. There's things like injections for women and men, but they're not physiologic. And in the sense that the ovary and testicles, it's a daily thing. It's a rhythmic thing. There's an output daily. And when you try and do injections, let's say for men, you're trying to put in enough for a week. In the old days, it was a month. You inject enough in one injection at the doctor's office. They'll last a month, and then they return every month. That was the old days. I was there for those old days. And then they improved it to every couple of weeks, then then they figured out, let's do it every week, then let's do it twice a week. That's about the best. But still, it does that unphysiologic thing of pushing a peak really high, and then it gradually declines. That's not physiologic. And what that happens is it provokes things. It provokes excessive levels of DHT. It provokes excessive levels of blood cell formation. So a lot of men need phlebotomy, they get drainage of blood because they're producing too much blood. If it was the only tool I had, I would stay with injection. If I was really going to stay with injections, I'd recommend daily. That's more physiologic. And it would eliminate those high peaks. But still, it goes almost right into the bloodstream when you inject in a muscle. So you still get those daily peaks. That's not what the ovary and the testicles did. So injections have never been a fan of. And then I heard about pellets, and there's conveniences to pellets. And one could see why you'd only want to come in every 3 months if you have to visit a doctor. But I was never comfortable with putting enough to last 3 months. And so I went and investigated the pharmacodynamics. How high do the levels get? How long do they last? And, if pellets was the only tool I had, I definitely would use it. I figured it out. The other thing I couldn't figure out about pellets is my experience on the front lines with women was they varied so much. How could you guess the right amount? How could you start low? You'd have to wait 3 months before you could do the next injection. And then, I would get pellet failures over the years, and we would test these women, and we'd see really high levels of testosterone. We know in medicine about supraphysiologic. When you go too high with something, look out. You can get someone who feels real good, but in the long run, high, powerful hormone levels, we've learned in medicine that this is not safe and has side effects. So, again, if it was the only tool I had, I'd stay with it. But I recommend that the whole field is evolving. And the evolution for me even went further. I became to learn that without an exception, topicals, applying it to the skin daily or twice daily, that's more physiologic, for estrogen was the optimal copy nature. Dr. Rose mentioned that term, copy. Why invent a new human? Design is really good. And that's what we're trying to do as best as possible, is to copy nature. And that daily topical administration, when you administer something to the skin, for one thing, the absorption is amazing. And it's slow and kind. It doesn't do those peaks. It takes 2 to 4 hours for things to get into the bloodstream. So instead of getting this, you get this. Gradual, slow. And that's so much kinder, and it doesn't provoke things. Like when you do that peaking, you provoke things. And I won't go into the weeds there to describe what you provoke, but the kindest way. And so I concluded early on, especially through the testing, that topical application of these hormones was optimal. Few exceptions, oral progesterone from time to time could be valuable, absolutely. And I also learned that the kind of individualization that I discovered I had to do, I could only get it through compounding pharmacies, which was a wonderful alliance because these are some of the most interesting and scientifically and curious of the pharmacists that exist. They like to mix things up. They like to individualize. That's the whole thing. And so I could write these precision prescriptions and keep on changing the prescription as I learn more and more about each woman. And so the teamwork with the compounding pharmacists, and there's 7,500 of them in the United States, and I know quite a few of them.
Well, and Dr. Rosensweet, one of the stories that I really enjoy from you, and it ties into one of the huge benefits of the BRITE program that I personally am very interested in, is the organic oil vape. You tell this story, and I think we're just in this time of the world in transition that people are starting to understand that we live in this very toxic world, and our body is holding on to these toxins, long list of toxins, and it's affecting our hormone health and how our cells function and our mitochondria, and we could go on and on. And so I just love the concept of, thinking of this as like organic and not putting toxic things into our bodies. So can you tell us that story, please?
Sure. I grew up really asking the question, what causes illness? And it came down to nutrition and exercise, too much or too little, and stress, and a dysfunctional response to stress, and toxins. Who would have guessed toxins. And by the time I was maturing in functional medicine, man, the information was coming out about the toxicity. In the 1990s, Dr. Berkson wrote a book called Hormone Disruptors, and we started learning this age of big problems. And it's not like drinking a bottle of arsenic, you know. It comes in molecule by molecule by molecule through the herbicides and pesticides. And what do they disrupt? They disrupt the endocrine system. They act like pseudoestrogens and other, they occupy hormone receptor sites of all the coincidences. And so I was very aware of toxicity, and with my functional medicine patients, I was guiding detoxification, rather challenging and long projects, but I was definitely into it. First of all, cleaning up, get rid of the toxins in your home and in your kitchen and your bathroom. And then 10 years into prescribing, what I used to do is I write a prescription to a pharmacist that was 60 miles away. I was in Santa Fe, he was in Albuquerque, and he would ship the hormones to my patients. And I had never seen a hormone. I was just writing prescriptions. And one day he sent, instead of to the patient, he sent a bottle of Bias to my office. And I was fascinated. White cosmetic jar, sealed, and I broke the seal because I wanted to see a hormone. And I took the cap off, and out comes this strong odor. And I wondered what that was, and I did some significant investigation, and I learned that hormones are fat soluble, and they do not absorb in water, and you can't get them into solution with water. You must use strong solvents, and the odor that I was smelling was a strong solvent, and that all the topical compounding pharmacies, pharmaceutical manufacturers eventually grabbed this away from the compounders, and they started producing topicals and gels. These were all strong solvents. And I was in partnership with my son at that time, and we set out to see, we got to do better than this. I did the calculation. I realized, oh, yes, I'm very much into detoxification, and I'm asking the women that I work with to apply a quart a year of this carbabol, because over 99% what's in a jar or a Topiclick or a spray is actually the solvent. And so we did research, and we came up, we consulted with a woman called the Oil Lady. There was one in the United States, a living expert in oils. And we wound up with our oil, with our certified organic oil as the base to carry the hormone. And it's not a solution. There's no solvents in there. You have to shake the bottle before use. Not very much, but you have to do it. And that's what we recommend. That's what BRITE is. It's the hormones in the topical form in an organic oil base. We love it. We have a lot of stories about the organic oil, and I love that we've come this far. And it's been about 15 years, so we really have a lot of experience with it. We see how amazingly absorbed. We see how friendly the oil is. We have testimonial, and that's what I use, by the way. Check out what the doctor uses.
That is so true. Absolutely. One other piece of the BRITE program that I would also love to have you touch on is the app and the technology behind it that just allows such thorough review of the patient's symptoms and helps calculate starting doses and very closely monitors and assists with dose adjustment. I have been very excited and very impressed by the technology.
I've been extremely blessed. I have partners in a team that's rather significant. And one of my partners is super interested in how can we get this uniform? How can we develop standard of care? How can we make A to Z best medicine we can possibly do and get board certification on this? How can we do medical studies? Well, he's very IT savvy. In fact, someone who was a partner with us at one time, he told my son, he said, you know what, we got to download your dad's brain and just put it into IT because the experience is all there. That's all that your dad's doing is taking the information in, and he says, we can program this. And every step of the way, so it's from the provider's point of view with their own portal and with so many tools, and the portal communicates with an app, a phone app, and we've really, how can we make this great? How can we make it easy? How can we make it fun? How can we make it standard so people don't make errors? They can't go outside of the box in their learning curve. And it's extensive. We've invested a lot into it with a big team, a big IT team. So bottom line, it translates into each provider having their own portal in which they can do a lot of things. And the patient is communicating with the provider with the app that's telling them when to take their hormones, what time of day, where their shipment is. There's questionnaires that we've standardized, and there's follow-up questionnaires. There's ways of tracking how a patient is doing as we tie it. It's extensive, and it's endlessly amusing to me to see what this team comes up with. It's touching to me, too, to see breakthroughs in medicine that make it better. That's the deal. How do you make it safer? How do you make it better? And how do you make it more fun, really?
I love all of those points. And gosh, I want to share with my patients and whoever may watch this what I have been impressed with as a provider who has practiced in the functional world and bioidentical hormones for 6 years here and got pretty comfortable with how I was doing things and thought you could do things pretty well. Just the education that I have been going through, the school, the online school that you have developed. I have right here my notebook and notes and notes and notes that is just a deeper dive and a different way of thinking about hormones than I have ever been exposed to. And again, I go to all of the conferences and I want to learn all of the new things, but I think it just speaks to what a top company BRITE is, how you are so invested in educating providers to provide the best care. And I also have to point out that you do a weekly grand round, you call it, where your providers join. And I've listened to some of these recordings and already learned so much in that arena, and just to reassure my patients that this is such a great opportunity for me as a provider to continue to learn and grow so that I can offer them the very best options. So congratulations and thank you for all of the really cutting edge work. You are leading the way here, and I can compare it to a lot of different routes that I have seen, and by far you are leading the way.
Yeah, that's one of the most rewarding things to me because you've already heard this, but years ago we were joined by another partner, Andre, and he flew from British Columbia to join Joshua and I to check us out because he heard about us and he was interested, but he wanted to see what is the inner workings of this if he was going to join and become a partner. And he spent 8 days with us, and he started out with mission. He said, "What are you guys really about?" It really clarified for us that when I was young, I was politically active. I wanted to make a difference. And without going into what I was doing there, I suspended that. And when he asked about mission, I realized that I had a place in improving the world. And it was when midlife women and midlife men had that major drop in hormones and how consequential it was. At the time they were at the peak of their experience and their empowerment, then crash, that being able to assist them, we thought that this planet desperately needs more feminine energy at every level, in the home, in business, and in politics, wherever decisions are made. And we saw that we have a chance to make a difference. And once again, it's a team sport. And we want to see millions and millions of men and women feel better in midlife and be inspired and start operating out of a place of feeling good and feeling great. And so the mission runs really deep. I got into teaching in the early 2000s and into research in the early 2000s. And I was standing in front of an audience of about 150 doctors once at A4M, along with Dr. Wright. And I was sitting there going, gee, when I go back to my practice, I see one patient after another and I affect the life. And here I am, I'm teaching 150 doctors and they're going back. I saw the leverage. So we got full on, and I started traveling about the country doing 2-day seminars. And then one day my son says to me, "Man, why don't we get you on video?" And that's when that all began. And we just followed a beautiful model that we learned in medical school, that you take a basic training and then you get ongoing mentoring. And I think that's what really distinguishes our program. There's the basic training, and it's evolved. So we're in the third generation of what's online, about 30 hours total when you get into it. But the basic training is followed by weekly mentoring through grand rounds, ancient medical tradition, as you know so well. You've attended them. And then private, we have a team, a medical team that will mentor people often on the spot if someone runs into a challenge. It's when you have 33 years into something, you can develop a lot of stuff. And that's what we've done. And it's just simply by focus. And it was challenging for me to focus. Was covering a lot of bases in functional medicine, but I realized I couldn't keep my arms around the knowledge base anymore. I want to zero in and see if I can get good at one thing here. And so here we go. We really encourage specialization because there's a lot to the hormone world, and there's a lot to getting it right. And it's easy to make mistakes and not know it and find out years later, oh, I was on an overdose. There's a problem with that. So anyway.
Well, Dr. Rosensweet, as we get into our last couple of minutes here, because that was a lot of information. If I were to do just a little bit of a summary here for my patient population that I hope will have really enjoyed this and learned a lot from this. Firstly, I just feel so honored to be able to do an interview with Dr. Rosensweet. Like, patients, that is a big deal. Dr. Rosensweet is a leader in the hormone world, and for him to have this kind of accessibility for me really speaks to his mission and how he wants to help people. For patients who are in the midlife, that's me. My attention is very closely on hormones right now, my own hormones even. I am really excited to be having more options, more information for hormone health and hormone optimization. And I think that's going to be a big deal for middle-aged people, just because with toxins and how our bodies are a little bit dysfunctional in some sense, hormone imbalance is a big deal. So if a person is not on hormones, I would be really excited to connect with them and talk to them about the BRITE program, which seems like just a really great way to be starting on the hormone journey. Because if you're going to be doing hormones for 20 to 30 to maybe 40, 50 years, which I definitely see myself doing that, I want to do it in the safest, most individualized, most balanced way possible. And then for patients who are our pellet hormone patients, this is probably a lot of information for them to also hear, because they feel great on their pellets and they like the convenience, and we have the system figured out. But I would invite them, I want to reassure those patients that our top goal is to definitely deliver top patient service and to take great care of our patients. And I don't want to, I'm not planning on, making people choose, but I really do hope that we're planting seeds. And bottom line, we want to do what is best for the patient and let them really have patient autonomy and choice. But I'm also hoping that the seed has been planted and we'll continue to water it to say, this is really a great direction to be considering. And so with that, Dr. Rosensweet, could you bullet point out maybe some of the benefits that those pellet patients specifically, again, can just quickly hear to say, okay, this is why I should, maybe give this a try?
Yeah. I think with some pellet patients, it's what you don't know that also matters. And the testing could reveal, and we're about to do a 24-hour urine hormone study with some pellet patients, but I've already seen the results on blood testing. So it's what you don't know. You can feel really great. As I teach providers, I say, when I hear from a woman to say, I feel really great, I go, that's great. And I wonder what's going on there. Because because sometimes there's not the balance and there's not the use of bias. There's another topic that we didn't mention there. It's we place at the bottom line protection and breast health. Really, the bottom line in menopause medicine is breast health. And there's something missing from that program, and it's called estriol. And of course, all of your patients have access to the book I wrote just by downloading a link. They can get the free PDF copy of it. And I really go into depth about the importance of adding estriol to. And so great that pellets have done so much good. And it's liable to be that there's something even better in store. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's a lot of, so yeah, to consider it, and no need to hurry, no need to rush. You take things in, and just like anything else, it's a process. It's an organic growth process to assess what's doing best for you. If I had any recommendation for your patients is pause and listen and assess how you feel, and maybe check in through some testing. But at any rate, I'm glad I'm sure the people that come to you are going to be very open to just exploring and discovering what's next, what's best for them. And I honor that and respect that.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Rosensweet, thank you again for your generosity with time, for how you have led the medical world in hormone replacement, and you actually call it replenishment, done safely and done right, and just how you have been such an open-minded thinker and put together such a huge knowledge base, and you have all these connections with all the experts. Thank you for what you are doing to make life better for every human, because we all have hormones, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of the BRITE team, and I look forward to what's to come.
Thank you so much, Christy.
All right. Thank you.